something amazing happened. People's powers grew way beyond what they thought was possible. A hunter who was only C rank could suddenly become an A rank, and a B rank hunter might even jump all the way to S rank. Jinchul's eyes widened with excitement as he thought about it. What if Jin-Woo Sung came back stronger than ever? Maybe even strong enough to take down all those monstrous beasts. The survivors told a terrifying story about a giant statue that could vaporize C rank hunters just by looking at them with its creepy eyes. Imagine taking down a magical monster while you're completely out cold. That's some serious power. The people in charge were so shocked that they made this whole thing a secret. They told everyone involved to keep quiet about it. When Jin-Woo's visitors came to see him in the hospital, they only got tiny bits of information about what was really going on with him. Jin-Woo got the royal treatment, a private room, and the best doctors in the hospital. Jinchul's heart started racing with excitement. Could it be true? Might Korea finally have a national rank hunter? There were less than 10 of these super strong hunters in the whole world. They were rumored to be more powerful than a nuclear bomb. Just imagine if Korea had one too. Luckily, it wouldn't be hard to figure out if Jin-Woo had experienced a second awakening. When the time is right, you have to act fast. Jinchul gave a quick order to one of his team members. Bring it over, he said. The team member walked to the corner of the room, grabbed something from a bag, and brought it back. As soon as they did, Jin-Woo's eyes widened in surprise. Is that? He started to ask. But Jinchul didn't let him finish. This is a manometer, he explained. It was a smaller version of the one used at the Hunters Association headquarters, but just as powerful. Jinchul showed Jin-Woo how it worked. All you need to do is put your hand on this essence stone, he said, pointing to a small glowing rock stuck in the middle of a round board. This stone was like nothing you'd ever seen before. Deep dark ebony that seemed to suck all the light out of the room. It was the most powerful essence stone in the world, taken from a super strong magic beast. If it was in good shape, it could sell for over 1 billion won. Jinchul's voice was serious as he spoke up. We really need your help with this investigation, so please cooperate. Jin-Woo nodded, his eyes still fixed on the stone. He had always dreamed of something big happening in his life, and if this was it, everything was about to change in a huge way. Something cool was about to happen, and it wasn't going to cost Jinchul a thing. He put his hand on the special essence stone, and instantly it started glowing softly. Jinchul, and the person with him were super nervous, sweating as they waited to see what would happen next. Then, with a gentle whooshing sound, the light around the stone disappeared. Jinchul quickly took off his sunglasses, and checked the result. His eyes widened in shock. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. That can't be. Jin-Woo thought, stunned. He checked the number again, but it didn't change. How is this possible? Hunters are supposed to have a lot of mana. People with licenses usually have between 70 and 100. But Jin-Woo's mana level was a tiny 10. That's more like what a normal person would have, not a hunter. He started to sweat as he wondered what was going on. Is this some kind of reawakening? He thought. What's my new rank going to be? Something amazing must have happened, because the two surveillance agents were totally freaking out. Jinchul nodded after checking Jin-Woo's new results against his old data. 4 years ago, Jin-Woo scored a 12 on his test. Now he got a 10. That's a drop of 2 points, but it's not a big deal. It's still within the normal range. The good news is that the mana meter, which measures all this stuff, is working just fine. Jin-Woo was running on empty. His energy was super low. It's a wonder he'd made it this far without collapsing. Jinchul suddenly stood up, looking like he'd had enough. There must have been some kind of mistake, he said with a nod. Sorry about that. Then he added, let's go. His partner quickly agreed, and they started packing their bags. Just as they were about to leave, Jin-Woo spoke up. Can you please tell me? But Jinchul just turned around and said, thanks for your help, before heading out the door. The two men in black suddenly rushed out of the room, like they were in a huge hurry. The space felt empty and quiet without them. Jin-Woo rubbed the back of his neck, feeling a little disappointed. He had been hoping for something more to happen, but now that he thought about it, he didn't really feel any different. There was just a weird sense of feeling refreshed, like he had taken a deep breath of fresh air. It's crazy to think that one person could take down all those powerful creatures, even if they had gotten a special boost of power. Maybe someone like Jongin Choi or Gun Hee-go, who are basically the strongest of the strong, could have done it alone. But honestly, nobody really knows for sure, because these top hunters are kind of mysterious. They don't often show off their skills in public, so it's hard to guess what they're capable of. One thing is clear, S-rank hunters are super powerful, but they're also pretty secretive. Jin-Woo was deep in thought, staring blankly ahead. He tilted his head back and looked up at the ceiling. Suddenly he noticed something weird. There were letters floating in the air. They spelled out a message. "You have unread messages." Jin-Woo's eyes widened in surprise. He blinked hard and opened them again, thinking it was just a trick of the eye. But nope, the words were still there. He shook his head, trying to clear the fog, and rubbed his eyes. Yet, when he looked again, the message remained, floating calmly in midair. He clutched his forehead, feeling like it was going to explode. Just a few days ago, he was hearing weird noises that weren't there. And now he was seeing things that couldn't be real. Was something really wrong with his brain? There's this condition called post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD for short. It happens to people who have been through something super traumatic, like a bad accident, or a really scary event. Losing a lot of friends and almost dying can play tricks on your mind. It's not weird to hear things or see stuff that isn't there, but some things just don't add up. He looked down at his leg and thought, my leg is fine, and it shouldn't be. A stone statue had cut it off in the underground temple of the double dungeon. Now, somehow it was back to normal. Strange things kept happening. The voice he heard out of nowhere, his leg healing on its own, and now a mysterious message floating in front of him. All these weird events were piling up. Maybe they weren't just random coincidences. Maybe they were all connected. Jin-Woo felt a little better now, that he had figured some things out. His headache wasn't as bad, and he was curious again. He looked up, wondering what secrets the messages might hold. Now that his head wasn't pounding so much, he could think more clearly. Maybe these messages would explain some of the weird things that had been happening. Jin-Woo reached out to grab the letters, eager to see if they held any clues. Jin-Woo's fingers waved through the air, but nothing happened. He was used to smartphones, where everything is touch-controlled. Now he was stuck, trying to figure out how to open his messages. Then he remembered what had happened before he passed out. He had been talking to a mysterious voice. Wait a minute, Jin-Woo thought. Maybe he could just talk to the system like he did before. But would it work if he just thought about it? Or did he need to say it out loud? Jin-Woo decided to try every possible command he could think of. Check, he said. Message. Then he tried combining them. Check message. And read message. He even tried being more casual. Look. I want to look. Let's take a look. And finally, show me. Just as he finished speaking, a voice replied, what is it you want to look at so badly? Jin-Woo felt like he was being watched, and he turned to see his sister standing behind the half-open door. She was wearing her high school uniform and peeking out at him with curiosity. Jin-Woo's mind went blank, and he stuttered. He had no idea what to say to her. Jin-Woo was busted. He had been begging someone to show him something while staring up at the ceiling. The weird thing was, he didn't have a clue why he was acting so strange. His sister Gina asked him from across the room, you sure you didn't hit your head or something? Jin-Woo shook his head, trying to reassure her. No, I'm good. But Gina wasn't buying it. She kept looking at him suspiciously, like she was trying to figure out what was really going on. Are you really okay? She asked again. Jin-Woo got frustrated and said, I told you, I'm fine. Gina didn't seem to believe him. She checked him out from head to toe, then suddenly charged towards him like a bull. Jin-Woo threw his hands up to protect himself as she started hitting him. I told you to stop getting hurt, she exclaimed. Do you know how worried I was? Jin-Woo looked down, feeling bad. I'm sorry, he muttered. His sister wasn't having it. Other hunters are fine, so why do you always end up getting hurt? She demanded. Jin-Woo apologized again. Sorry. His sister's hit started to slow down, and soon she stopped fighting altogether. She bowed her head and began to cry. Jin-Woo gently rubbed his sister's back as she sniffled, trying to comfort her. His heart felt like a ton of bricks. How could he even think about giving up and leaving the person he loved behind? He was super grateful to be alive. Thinking back, there were some pretty crazy moments when he thought for sure he was a goner, like when the giant's laser eyes blasted him, or when that shield sliced off his leg, or when he got speared. It was amazing he'd made it through all those close calls. Jin-Woo slowly opened his eyes, feeling like he was shaking off a terrifying dream. His gaze wandered to the words floating in front of him. You have unread messages. It all felt surreal, like he was still trapped in that bad dream. There were so many things he couldn't understand, but none of that mattered right now. What mattered most was that Jin-Woo was alive, and could see his family again. Just then his sister let out a sniffle. Luckily she quickly stopped crying, but then she started nagging him, non-stop for the next hour. "Got it," she kept saying, making sure he was listening to every word. Jana's eyes blazed with a fierce warning. "If you get hurt one more time, I'm done. I'll drop out and get a job to support us, and you'll have to quit being a hunter." Her sharp gaze was just like her brother Jin-Woo's. It didn't match her pretty face at all. Jin-Woo sighed and nodded, looking annoyed. Okay, got it." But Gina wasn't satisfied yet. She made him promise again and again until she finally felt better. Then she stood up to leave. "Where are you going?" Jin-Woo asked. "School," she replied. "I'm only allowed to visit for a minute. Then I have to leave." He understood and nodded. Gina's big university entrance exam is coming up next year. What's amazing is that she's always been at the top of her class without ever having a private tutor or attending extra classes after school. Jin-Woo is super proud of her. Gina has a big dream. She wants to become a doctor one day. She used to love playing video games and hanging out with friends. But everything changed when her mom got sick. Suddenly, she wanted to become a doctor and spent most of her time studying at her desk. Jin-Woo really wanted to help her achieve her dream. "Wait, what was that?" "A video game." Jin-Woo's eyes lit up. "Hey, wait. I'll catch you later," he called out before she could leave the room. "Gina," someone said. "What?" she replied. Then the person asked, "When you play a game?" Gina grinned mischievously. "I don't really play games anymore. I'll be a senior soon." The other person knew this, but they had a question anyway. I know. But I have to ask," they said. Gina seemed curious. "Really? About what? Have you started playing again?" Jin-Woo quickly looked at some words that were still floating in the air. "What do you do if you get a message in a game, and you want to read it?" he asked. Gina thought for a moment. "First, you would open your inbox," she said. As soon as Jin-Woo said open, some hidden messages appeared with a fun little sound effect. It turned out Jin-Woo had 2 unread messages. The first one said, "Congratulations on becoming a player." The second message was about a daily quest called strength training. Jin-Woo's face lit up with excitement. But his sudden happiness made Gina feel a bit uneasy. "What's going on?" she asked, looking at her brother with concern. Jin-Woo was playing a game, but he didn't want any help. "No, I've got this," he said firmly, shaking his head. He wondered how his sister would react if she knew what was going on. But he didn't want her to think he was crazy, so he kept quiet. To get some alone time, Jin-Woo walked his sister to the elevator and pretended he was just seeing her off. As soon as she was gone, he rushed back to his hospital room. He couldn't make the same mistake again. He locked the door to make sure no one would interrupt him. Now that he was ready, Jin-Woo sat on his bed and started reading some messages. The first one said, "Congratulations on becoming a player." The second one was about a daily quest called strength training. Jin-Woo felt like he had seen the first message before, but he couldn't remember where. He thought to himself, "Where have I heard that before?" Jin-Woo's eyes landed on the first message. "Congratulations on becoming a player." It sounded familiar, but he couldn't quite place it. Then he saw the words that followed. "This system is designed to assist the development of the player. Failure to comply with the system may result in a penalty. The rewards have been delivered." Suddenly memories came flooding back. He remembered hearing those exact words before he passed out. Back then, a voice had mentioned something about being a player, but Jin-Woo had no idea what it meant. Now as he read the message again, he was just as confused. What did development mean? What kind of penalty were they talking about? And what rewards were they giving him? The words sounded like they belonged in a video game. But Jin-Woo didn't understand the rules. He felt frustrated and unsure about what to do next. How was this system supposed to help him, anyway? Jin-Woo's eyes widened as he opened the next message. The subject line jumped out at him. Daily quest. Strength training. He gulped. His heart started racing. What could this be about? He took a deep breath and checked the message. It said, "Daily quest. Strength training. Do 100 push-ups. Not done 0,100. Do 100 sit-ups. Not done 0,100. Strong 100 squats. Not done 0,100. Not done 0,100. Warning. If you don't finish this quest, you'll get in trouble." Jin-Woo burst out laughing. Haha, seriously, he thought. The message was a letdown. It wasn't some cool, powerful training exercise like he expected. It was just a bunch of workouts to get him in shape. But at the same time, Jin-Woo knew that if he did all these exercises, he would be stronger and healthier. He couldn't argue with that. Were those really the signs of development and rewards he had been hoping for? Now that he thought about it, he remembered something he had read in a book. It said that when you're struggling with yourself, you should listen to your own thoughts and feelings. But maybe he was just seeing what he wanted to see. Did he really want to get stronger so badly that his mind was playing tricks on him? He let out a laugh, but it wasn't funny, it was bitter. Jin-Woo let out a frustrated sigh. If he could have become a stronger hunter with something as simple as this, why did he put himself through so much pain and struggle? He shook his head, feeling pretty pathetic for trying to find answers in a message that might not even be real. Whatever, Jin-Woo thought, tossing himself onto his bed. He stared blankly at the ceiling, his mind a million miles away. Time seemed to fly by, even though he wasn't doing anything except lying there. The silence in the hospital room was starting to feel really heavy. Jin-Woo suddenly sat up straight. A thought popped into his head. What if something amazing actually happened? He felt a mix of excitement and doubt. His mind started racing with the idea of giving it a try. After all, he had nothing to lose. If he thought of it as just a casual workout, why not give it a shot? Jin-Woo finally picked up the phone and made the call. Jin-Woo jumped out of bed, ready to take on a challenge. He started with some light stretching to get his muscles warm. Then, he gripped the bed frame and began doing push-ups. 1, 2, 3. He counted to himself. The numbers kept going up quickly. 97, 98, 99, 100. He finally reached 100 push-ups. But nothing exciting happened. Well, except that his arms were now a bit sore. Jin-Woo let out a laugh and stood up straight. Suddenly, he saw 2 messages he hadn't noticed before. Congratulations on becoming a player, and daily quest, strength training has arrived. They had changed from unread to read, but how did he even get them? Jin-Woo was done with his messages. There weren't any new ones to read. He also didn't feel like playing along with the crazy ideas being sent to him anymore. That's it, he thought, and closed the message screen right away. Asala. A big yawn escaped his mouth as he got back into bed. Lately he hadn't been doing much, so all this activity was making him really sleepy. The sky outside the window was turning pink, orange and purple like a beautiful sunset painting. Jin-Woo couldn't believe how late it had gotten. He remembered what the 2 agents from the surveillance team had told him. His hospital bills would be covered. Now he could get a full checkup and stay in the hospital until the doctor said he was completely healthy again. As Jin-Woo lay in bed, he thought about how nice it would be to feel better soon. The weird visions and hallucinations should fade away with time. His eyelids started to droop, and before long they closed completely. Jin-Woo fell fast asleep. The clock on the wall kept ticking away. Tick-tock, tick-tock. Its hands moved steadily as Jin-Woo slept peacefully. Time was running out. The clock spun around and around. The seconds ticking away. It read 11:59:57, then 58 seconds, 9 seconds, and finally 60 seconds. The clock hands froze at exactly 12 o'clock. Ping! A message popped up. You haven't finished your daily quest. Now you'll be sent to the penalty zone for a while. Arrgh! Rumble! The ground started shaking wildly. Jin-Woo's whole body vibrated, and he jolted awake. An earthquake, he wondered, sitting up fast and grabbing the end of his bed for support. The earthquake was incredibly powerful, making it tough for Jin-Woo to stay on his feet. Rumble! The ground shook harder and harder as the seconds ticked by. Then, out of nowhere, frowns. But that's not exactly what happened. It didn't break, it just disappeared. Jin-Woo quickly looked at his hands to see what was going on. Instead of gripping the metal frame, he was clutching a handful of sand. Sand. What was going on? Frowns. The other half of the bed frame crumbled away too, turning into sand right before his eyes. The earthquake just kept getting stronger. Rumble. Jin-Woo lost his balance and tumbled off the bed, crying out in surprise. Arg! Jin-Woo let out a loud scream as he was tossed around the hospital room like a rag doll. Suddenly everything around him, the beds, chairs, and tables turned into sand. Huss! He yelled as he flew through the air. Wham! He landed with a thud and found himself buried under a pile of fine, smooth sand. The earthquake that had caused all the chaos finally stopped. Jin-Woo lifted his head, spitting out the sand that had filled his mouth. Blex! Ugh! He groaned. As he looked around, he saw nothing but endless dunes of sand stretching out before him. Jin-Woo scowled and struggled to his feet. Sand poured out of his clothes, trickling down from every crevice. He stood up, brushing himself off. and gazed out at the desert landscape that had once been a hospital room. Jin-Woo looked around, brushing sand off his chest. All he saw was more sand, endless dunes stretching out in every direction. A desert, he thought. Confused. This didn't add up. Just a few moments ago he was sure he'd been lying in a hospital bed in Seoul, a bustling city surrounded by towering buildings and busy streets. But now, as he opened his eyes, all he saw was sand and more sand. Jin-Woo scooped up a handful of the golden grains and watched as they trickled out of his fist, wondering how he'd ended up in this strange place. Jin-Woo felt like he was in a weird dream. The air was super still, not a single breeze, but that wasn't the weirdest part. When he looked up, he didn't see the sun, moon, or any stars. It was like the sky was painted with black ink. Yet he could see everything around him just fine. He wondered, where am I? Just then, he heard a hissing sound. Months. The ground beneath him started to slip away, and he felt himself sliding down a slope. Whoa! Jin-Woo quickly scrambled to get away from the edge before he got sucked down. As the hole got bigger, he barely made it out alive. He used his hands and feet to scramble up to the top, panting like crazy. Huff, huff, puff. When he finally sat down to catch his breath, he stared back at the hole. It was weird. The bottom seemed to be bubbling. Just thinking about sliding all the way down made him shiver. He would have fallen if he had slipped up just once. But then Jin-Woo took a closer look. Wait a minute, he thought. His eyes narrowed. It's not boiling. Something massive was moving under the surface, making the water squirm and swirl. Jin-Woo suddenly jumped up, his instincts screaming that something was off. He had a bad feeling about what was coming next. As he slowly backed away, the sand in front of him erupted into a massive explosion. It sounded like he was standing under a powerful waterfall. The roar was deafening. Jin-Woo's eyes went wide with shock as he stared. What was emerging from the cloud of sand? An insect, he exclaimed. A gigantic centipede was rising up, its body towering over him. The monster was enormous, as tall as a 5-story building. Jin-Woo's eyes were fixed on the creature as it let out a thunderous roar. Grr. He gulped, his heart racing with fear. This was insane. The centipede was enormous, unlike anything he had ever seen before. But its massive size wasn't the only shocking thing about it. Above the creature's head, a name floated in red writing. Poison-toothed giant desert centipede. He rubbed his eyes, wondering if he was dreaming. But when he opened them again, the words were still there. It was like something out of a video game. Jin-Woo felt a strong dislike for the creature's name, and it was matched only by how creepy and disgusting it looked. Jin-Woo's eyes widened as he stared at the centipede. What really caught his attention was the word poison-toothed. He looked closer and saw 2 small fangs attached to the bottom of its jaw. It wasn't hard to figure out what would happen if it bit him. The centipede's huge teeth and jaws kept opening and closing, like it was getting ready to attack. Looks like it's licking its chops, Jin-Woo thought. Just then he heard a chime in his head. Ping! A message appeared. Penalty quest survival. He had to survive for a certain amount of time. The goal was to make it through 4 hours. The timer started counting down. 4,000 taos. Jin-Woo couldn't believe it. This is a joke, right? He thought. But before he could even process what was happening, the centipede charged at him through the sand. The timer had just changed to 3599. It was like the centipede was waiting for the signal to attack. Fresh, Jin was spun around and started running as fast as he could. He didn't have time to think. He just had to go.